Mm. This is my 5th time recording to get this message out. And I recorded this 4 times previously. And each time, when I completed the recording, it disappeared like it never happened. So I may not interact with you all in the chat, but I'm going to channel this message and get this out. Let me call in my guides before I channel this message. My higher divine self to speak through me. Dokala kamaba bakasete ko sonolo kotoko. Taisi shete komani de fofo kanere kanala pite koteke. Shite kololo komaba kelele tene kololo fama beke. Pues kalara te kalele to kololo kolole ke de namabe. Por kololo bara sende kerere shanala te ko. Tale kaboko mai kapasite ke. Do kakasama ka do kolele fama makate. Toka bakalele te ko kolele ke de ne do ko bakabisike. Tan shikere te kololo ko mama be kelele te kofo. Poka bakabaka si shite kolele ni kolele te kololo koto. Tan shikere te kasama bakoko bakaiti. Takirere shite kololo ko makabire se kabaka boko se. Boy kabai si shi kololo ko mate pati kalele fo ko bai mike. Kabe kale. Klit kan mano ko kamaka muta fa kai sekara ni de ko zave kero na matata futuko banati nu pa pekade de kolele te kabagati de kolele te kolelo kamada shite kolelo ko bati tanji ke se kolelo shukabarisi tashi kareraisi do kosakabate tankambate. Why was it so important for us to be broken? Why was it so important? You can come in for us to be buried. Why was it so important for us to be damaged, for our families to be dysfunctional, for us to not know how to love, for us to not know how to heal? Why was it so important for us to be fed things that were going to lead to chronic illnesses? Why was it so important for us to give our lives to wars? Why was it so important for us to have beliefs that were not the ways of our ancestors? Why was it so important to put separation between us? Why was it so important to cause man and woman to not know how to come together one and be in unity with one another? Why was it so important for women to be overloaded with burden that was never theirs to carry? Why was it so important for us to be put in a position of always feeling like we are oppressed and trapped? Why was it so important to make us feel small? Why was it so important to make us feel like we have to dim our light? Why was it so important for us to have indoctrination in schools, to pledge allegiances to things that we did not understand? Why was it so important for us to be forced to be put down in water, baptized and brought up when our mother's womb already brought us through the waters, because their water had to break? When Jesus split the water, when Moses split the water, the Red Sea, that was the woman water breaking to give birth. Why was it so important to rewrite these stories, to rewrite these narratives? Why was it so important to cause us to distrust our own intuition? Why was it so important to cause us to feel like we are nothing more than the things that we cannot do right? Why was it so important for us to feel guilt, to feel shame, to feel like we will never enough, never be good enough? Why was it so important for our music to have trauma happening in the backgrounds? Why was it so important to shift all of the frequency of our music from 32 hertz to 440 hertz. Why was it so important? Because it was going to sever us from our soul. Just because you are alive does not mean you are connected to your soul. This is why there is no harmony. This is why we struggle to find peace. This is why chaos seems to reign supreme. See, I was sitting here and I was watching the Wheel of Time, and I've been taking my time watching this TV show because TV shows is actually how we get information. For those of us who know, you know. We were lied to and made to believe that entertainment was nothing but entertainment, but it holds a lot of codes. And I was sitting here processing this. And I remember being born and being a child who had memories of a past life and conversation. I would say things when I was 5 years old, like when I used to be a little boy, I died when I was 17. When I used to be a man, I would say this just in conversation, playing with people. And people started to bully me because they made me feel like it was weird. And they were like, you were never a man and you're only 5 years old. How did you used to be 17? They didn't understand. And so then I learned to be ashamed of these things and to suppress this and shut this down, and don't let people know that I see spirits. Don't tell people that I can see death behind people before they die, because it's weird and you're not supposed to do that. So I learned how to be fake. I learned how to be normal. I learned how to act like everybody else, even though I knew that I was different. See, I was what they call an indigo child. I could see portals into other dimensions. And we moved around a lot as a kid, and every house was different. Spirits would attack me. They would sit on my back and they would suffocate me in the middle of the night, and I couldn't scream. And I didn't know why. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I didn't understand what was different about me, and I felt small. And I learned that the way that you get along with people is to dim your light, because people are more comfortable with you if you're like them, because they feel small. And so I carried this weight at a very young age. At a very young age, I knew that something was wrong with our world. I knew that something was wrong when I would see people fight one another. I knew that we weren't supposed to be laying our hands on each other. It was just something so off about that. We were supposed to be healing each other, but here we are taking each other's lives. And then the crack epidemic happened. And I had nightmares every night. I was remembering something. See, when you cannot just walk up to people and burn them on stakes anymore, when you cannot just take groups of people and shackle them together and throw them off into the sea anymore, you have to find another way to get rid of the people who may be a problem in the future. Because capitalism and oppression is the way of the 3D matrix. And so instead of doing that, they did it in a different way. Drugs was brought into our communities. Because a lot of the people who came before us, our parents, our caregivers, our grandparents, they had a pain deep inside of them. They were born with grief from wombs that grieved. Y'all have to remember that babies were cut and ripped out of us. Y'all have to remember that our ancestors watched our children be fed to alligators. That pain don't just disappear. It has to be processed with rituals and ceremonies. And we lost our way. We forgot who we were. The medicine men and the medicine women became the drug addicts and the alcoholics because they were severed. They were severed from their soul. They were severed from the wisdom of their ancestors. There was a time that we could walk into the woods and we would gravitate to what would heal us. And it was something that we just knew. It was intuition. It was instincts. And we knew how to take care of each other. And there's a group of people who did not have this ability. And this put fear inside of them. So they created ways to bind our magic, to bind our ashe. And they used war and bloodshed to spread beliefs that would continue to sever us from our power generation after generation after generation. And children would grow up with parents who were alcoholics and struggling with substance abuse because they didn't know how to deal with the pain that they inherited. And now we know that that is something that has been found in science called epigenetics, and it imprints itself onto us. They were just doing the best that they could, and I watched this. I cried every night, every day. I cried. I knew that the world that I was living in was not supposed to be this way. I knew that the people who were laying their hands on each other to hurt each other were supposed to be healing each other. This was never the way of our people. Our people are peaceful people. But we had to learn how to survive. And they did the best that they could. And while all of this was happening, children were being molested, both boys and girls. And a lot of those boys have grown up to be men who struggle to identify their sexuality. They grew up to be men who have a hatred towards their women because they have a hatred, a mother wound. Daughters who have a hatred for men because they have a father wound. We didn't understand that there was a level of pain that they already knew was coming because they consulted with the oracles to find out who are these special souls that are going to come to this earth and create a new earth, create a new way, create a new paradigm, build new communities. Who are these people? And we must stop them because we will no longer be able to reign supreme over them. And the things that they came up with was through alcohol, which severs you from your soul. It numbs you for a moment, but it severs you from your soul. It dries up your organs. It destroys your body. And if alcohol didn't get you, we will make sure that the drugs get you. And so the drugs came to the communities. Allegedly, they were brought into our communities with an intention. And violence started to surge. Many children still had to go to school after being molested and abused. And then we would go to church on Sunday and get molested and abused again. I went through this and I wondered, I said, this is supposed to be the place where God is. But for some reason, I don't feel safe. I don't feel like I fit in here. I see spirits in this place that is supposed to be a place of holiness. I can see the terrible things that this person who was preaching to me has done. And you can't tell anybody. Shh, they said. Be quiet. And then they took our conjurers, those who would sing songs sitting around the fire to help us to grieve, to help us to heal, to help us to feel community, to be connected with nature. And they took those and they gave those people record deals pulled them straight out of the church oftentimes and gave them record deals. And this is why so many celebrities who sung in church and used their gift and got record deals ended up on drugs and substance abuse, because they were trying to soothe the pain that they were meant to alchemize and heal. And they knew that they would be able to use this. And if that level of trauma wasn't enough to reverse engineer our ancestral intelligence, they then took the music and put it in 440 hertz, which is a disharmonious frequency. It is a frequency that summons pain. And if you don't know how to process pain, if you don't know how to transmute that pain, what do? You put on a strong face, a fake smile, and you get up every day and act like everything is normal and act like everything is okay. I watched this happen. I could see spirits and shadowy figures connected to people my entire life. I thought I was losing my mind. I couldn't figure out what was going on with me and why was no one else talking about this. And I was told to just pray about it. But I said, this drug is destroying my community. People are willing to sell their children's bodies. People are willing to sell their bodies to get this drug. People are willing to take lives. And they took the men who were supposed to protect our communities, and they became the drug dealers. But they were supposed to be the healers. And they claim these blocks. This is my block. This is my dope. And they reverse engineered our ancestral intelligence, our connection to source. No matter what name we go by, there is a source creation of all things seen and unseen. And we went to war with one another. The Civil War that we heard about back in the day was used to disconnect man from woman, parents from children, our hearts from our minds, and our souls from our bodies. And so many of us were empaths. We felt things deeply. But we learned to keep our head on a swivel at all times because we didn't feel safe nowhere. Some of us went to church and we got sexually abused there, and some of us became choir boys and we got sexually abused there. It was like, nowhere is safe. Where am I ever safe? So they knew, even if we became spiritually activated in the age of Aquarius, as long as we continue to be emotionally dysregulated, we will not ever shift the paradigm. We will not reclaim the power of our ancestors. We will not learn to heal. We will need those white coats to fix us. The ones with the one kundalini serpent going up the staff. The ones who claim to be religious and holy. We would depend on those who stand in the pulpits. But because we were severed from our power, because we did not know how to trust intuition, to see energy, to see things through our third eye, which is the first eye, we couldn't see that the people in the pulpit was pulling people into a pit of more pain and suffering. And so the mind was psychologically enslaved. The soul was severed as bodies were being constantly placed in a grave. And then they created a court system that was unfair. It lacked true justice. And that's where we go to fix our issues, but that wasn't the way of our ancestors. We lost those ways. The books were burned. The Library of Alexandria was burned down because they didn't want us to ever have access to that knowledge. We were told that all of the ways that we used to heal ourselves was demonic, so that we wouldn't even look in the direction of guidance from our ancestors. It created distrust between us and those that walked before us, who were walking in oneness with nature, with this planet, who understood that we come from the galaxies. We do not come from here. We fell down here to have this human experience. But we are all God and goddesses, fragmented, and we each have a role to play. And everything around us in the 3D matrix was programmed to cause us to feel small. To feel like nobody will ever listen to you. Nobody will ever love you. Nobody will ever see you. And that hatred on the outside of us was then placed on the inside of us. But those fire letters inside our DNA continued to burn. And they used every form of technology they could to decipher the codes in our DNA. And because they couldn't decipher it, they called it junk. It's trash. It's worthless. Because we can't manipulate it. We don't have access to it. We can't read it. And now, as an oracle who has fought battles that many people could never imagine, I sat in the hospital day after day, week after week, month after month, processing these things, having visions of the future. I didn't know what was happening. And so I started pulling my laptop out and I started recording these prophecies and these visions and these dreams. And then something called YouTube happened and I started to upload them to YouTube. And every single one of my dreams and visions has come true. And there are some that are just now coming true. I didn't know who I was. I thought that nobody loved me. I thought that I was worthless. I thought that I was crazy. I thought that I was possessed with demons, because that's what I was told. Anytime a person goes through a lot of trauma, that person is here to do something special on this planet. And though others may not see how special you are, I want to remind you that what you feel about you matters more than what others think is true. I now know who I am. I am now no longer afraid of my power. And I will use my power for the black sheeps, for those who never fit in, for the starseeds, the indigo children, the crystal children, those that people call weird, the ones who were bullied, abused, neglected, forgotten about. There's something special about each and every one of us. We're not here just to go to work, to pay bills, and to pretend like we're normal. We're here to be who we are. We're here to be authentic. And that means going on a journey inside of yourself. See, the mystics, they taught these teachings, that everything that you seek is inside of you. And this is why the world, the 3D matrix, the social constructs, the programming, the things that we've been told is acceptable. That's why it exists. It oppresses us. It causes us to be afraid of the things that we're supposed to lean into. Shadow work is not for everybody. And I will give a warning. Before you do shadow work, I'm talking about real shadow work. You need to be able to love every part of you. Because shadow work is going to tear apart your illusions. And it's going to rip open your ego. And anything that you have been doing that is not aligned with your soul is going to fall apart. And it's not to destroy you, but it is to rebirth you. And so many of us as children, we knew something was wrong. We knew something was off with this world, with the way people did things. And so I spent the last 19 years sharing these truths, these codes, not realizing that I was an Akashic library reader. So when they destroyed the Library of Alexandria in the physical realm, the Library of Alexandria still exists in the Akashic records. Cloud is not something Apple created. None of this technology is. It existed within the spirit realm. And so that information is accessible to me. It's not a coincidence that I was born in Alexandria. It was to help me remember who I was. And most everything in my life, if you looked at my life, most people believe that I am nobody and nothing. And they're partly right. Because I'm not here to try to pretend, to try to be somebody, to act like I got it all right. I'm a student of this life. I graduated from a school with Egypt in its name to help me remember from that which I came and the codes that my womb holds within me to reconnect me to my soul. I chose an Egyptian name, Kamsin, for a reason. And you would think that someone who remembers that she's an oracle with access to the Akashic records that have shared these dreams and these visions and these methods for manifestations and ways to heal some of the deepest, darkest experiences, to be able to be at peace despite the chaos happening in the world. You would think that my videos would reach a lot of people, but they don't. And I thought that it meant that I was ineffective. But the accuracy says something very different. And I began to realize why the oracle in the movie The Matrix, she wasn't standing on a stage. She didn't have a whole lot of people listening to her. She had a small group of children with her. And they were learning to bend spoons. Spoons represent how we feed ourselves, the indoctrination, the beliefs, the knowledge that we have been fed, the philosophies that are not aligned to connect us with our soul. She was with a small group, and she was highly protected. And that lack of access to the knowledge that I freely share is because I'm highly protected. And it's not for everybody. If the 3D Matrix supported me, then who would I really be? And so I'm grateful. And there are many souls that I have been able to help. And they have been able to help others. And this is how you create a new earth. I demystify the things that have been so mystical and difficult to understand, and I make it simple. Before Black people started being given record deals to do country music, I was writing country songs because I was hearing them in my dreams. I was sitting on porches of houses that still had outhouses and brick ovens. Feel like I was in the 1800s and all we had was cans and sticks, and I was sitting there and I was singing and rapping and rhyming and making music, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. I walked away from music deals. I didn't want to be a part of the music industry. It was something deep inside of me that knew was something wrong, and that my gifts would be used in a way that it wasn't intended for. And so I started to write those songs and write those dreams. And then 2 years later, black people started to get record deals to do country music. And whenever this happens, those who own the record labels, those who own distribution, they have an intent of their own. See, if you were really getting knowledge that was not meant to be given because it holds power, it would be resistance around it. And this is why I have a sacred community of untamed souls where I can speak clearly without having to remove words like WHITE that I have to say YT. It makes no sense. Something is trying to change the algorithm. Algol is a star that represents war. Rhythm is movement. Something wants to interrupt and interfere with the movement. This is ancestral intelligence that comes through me. And then I had a dream that I walked outside and some type of massive disaster occurred and electric cars were no longer working and we didn't have power. And I didn't feel safe. And I looked around and there were black men riding horses. When I say black, I mean indigenous. Riding horses, making sure that women and children were safe and protected, had food and water, and a safe place to be. And this dream was so real to me. And I was lucid. And so I asked one of the men on the horses, "Why are y'all riding horses?" And they said, "You don't know?" It was like the electrical grid is down, the power grid is down. Are you okay? Do you need us to take you somewhere safe? And I looked at my vehicle. I tried to crank it up and it wouldn't crank. And they looked like cowboys. And I got on the back of the horse and they took me somewhere safe. And standing in the door, watching them leave, I started to shed tears. Because I realized that a lot of the men on this planet right now who are supposed to know how to hold safe, sacred space are the ones who are doing the damage, even if it's unintentional. A lot of them are emotionally immature. A lot of them are addicted to substances. A lot of them are not emotionally regulated, but they're being spiritually activated, and that makes them dangerous. And I see the videos of a lot of young women saying, "I'm just not going to get in a relationship. I'm just going to focus on me," and I get it. I get it. But I travel to a timeline that's bleeding over into this world now, where men are healing. And men are going to reclaim their thrones, reclaim their space as chiefs, as protectors, as medicine men. This is happening. But if we do not believe it's happening, if we can't visualize a future that is different, we will forever stay stuck repeating these trauma loops in this simulated reality of what the Matrix wants us to think and believe. I have not given up on believing that our men could be different. But a lot of us look at our own fathers, and without that father wound being healed, you will not see another way. And you will attract what it is that you believe. And so you must change your beliefs in your subconscious mind just to see men in that glory and that honor. Do you realize when the colonizers first came here, that's what they saw? Do y'all realize that? Do you realize that everything that we consume, this is the spoons in the movie Matrix, everything that we feed ourselves, there's some type of interference, some type of distraction, some type of poison, some type of toxicity everywhere that we look. There was a time where we were the ones that made it rain when our crops needed rain. We didn't need machines to do it for us. And we're being called to heal so that we can reclaim the estate that is ours. And that means that you're going to have to face some things. You're going to have to stop running. You're going to have to face it. You're going to have to figure out what it is that causes you to be depressed, anxious, fearful, doubtful, angry, hateful, resentful. All of these things stem from fear. The hatred of our oppressors embedded itself in our genetics. So we oppress each other and our own selves. We don't know how to be with each other. We don't know how to love each other because we have not yet really learned how to love ourselves. And we're so busy chasing the American dream and the mighty dollar that we don't even take the time to listen to the silence, to listen to the message that the trees bring, to listen to the message that the wind wants to speak to you. What is the river saying? We will no longer just wade in the water, but the water is wading inside of us to purify us of the colonizers' programming, of the way that they distorted our perception. When you can't see that the trauma and abuse you went through was to benefit you, it's because the virus of the matrix using fear, which the indigenous cultures call wetiko, is manipulating you to keep you feeling small and powerless. You are capable. Whatever it is that is being placed in your heart and on your soul to do, you are capable. We must get back to our rituals. We must get back to our sacred tools and our ceremonies. A few days ago, I went to one of the mounds here in Memphis, Tennessee. I was called. Dream after dream after dream, I've been called. And in one of those dreams, an indigenous man gave me a black feather and a white feather. And then I woke up. And I knew that was a message. See, in the astral realm, a lot of us are doing the deeper healing there. Because days are getting shorter, time is speeding up. A lot of us don't really know how to manage everything on our plates, because we're going through this great awakening. So Earth is not the same as it was in the 80s and the 90s and even the early 2000s. This is a very different version of Earth that we're on. So I knew that I was being called to the river because the Mississippi River is also called the Black Feather by indigenous serpents, and it spreads out to 7 main rivers. And as I sit on the bluff by the Mississippi River, on the mound, birds were singing in the middle of the day in a way I had never heard before. It was as if time stood still. And my daughter, she is on the autistic spectrum, and she also has anxiety, social anxiety, and so she is usually very reserved. But she was just skipping, so happy and so free. And a lot of us, it would really do us benefit to look to our children for messages from Spirit and guides. And if you still whooping your children, it's time to stop that. That's not the way of our ancestors. That whole spare the rod, spoil the child thing is in alignment with slavery. It's not in alignment with love. But I've already taught conscious parenting. I spent years teaching that. And I'm not going to keep going over the same stuff that I've already taught. If you want to find that, y'all got plenty of videos and you know where to look because I've told you. If you're new here, just go back and look. But I saw how happy she was and how free she felt. And she said, Mom, you want to climb the mound? Let's climb the mound and sit on it. And this is so not like her. I knew that something about this felt like home to her. And as I walked around, I expected to have a vision or get a message. And none of that happened. And I walked around the backside of this mound and saw what looked like someone had been buried there, a really old grave. And it had an iron cross stuck in the side of the mound. I said, but my ancestors, they weren't using the cross as a symbol. Why is this here? And I spent years deconstructing religion, finding out what the Lord's Prayer really means, what it really does, who the angels really are, what the Key of Solomon really was, what the demons of Goetia really are, and where are they. I spent years doing this, and I shared all of that knowledge freely as I went through my spiritual awakening. That channel is demonetized. The more knowledge I shared, the less money I made. And it put me in a really tough spot. But I continued to do it. The Matrix was challenging me. The Matrix wanted me to break. The Matrix wanted me to feel like because I didn't have money to do things that I needed to do, that it would put enough pressure on me that I would shut the fuck up and stop telling people the truth. But I didn't. I didn't cave. I went through it. And I'm grateful for the poverty that I experienced as a child because it taught me how to deal with not having enough. This is why we engineer, innovate, and invent things. We are extremely adaptable and resilient. And so I was pulling from the wealth of my ancestors on how to survive with little. Because the abundance that I was accessing wasn't going to be through cash money, through paper printed that really creates more debt. It was a different type of abundance. It was abundance of ancestral wisdom, wealth, and intelligence. And as I sat at this mound, I said, I'll be back. Because a storm was coming. And I want you to keep something in mind. That this mound is not that far from President's Island. And President's Island is where the AI Supercenter is. You think that space was chosen just because? The ley lines are reactivating. The Stargate portals are opening. And the people who are supposed to be participating and guiding, they don't know who they are. They don't remember their power. They don't think they're enough. They feel like failures. But you are the true chosen ones. And as you heal, you will remember who you are. As you integrate with the shadows, as you learn to turn pain into purpose, you will live a life of purpose. And we won't have to slave ourselves for wages that's not enough. We won't have to hate waking up and going to work on Monday anymore. We won't have to just take the weekend of the deal and it's the only time we get to rest like slaves. That is changing. We are here to shift a paradigm, but all paradigm shifters must experience the void, the liminal space, the space where it seems like nothing is working out in your favor, because we must learn how to not allow our external environment to dictate our internal energy systems. It's time for us to break up with codependency on what we see outside of us, because the physical material world is what was. It is what you cannot see that will be. And we must learn how to walk by that faith that we learn and not by that sight of what we see. Though I have studied the Bible, I know how to use it esoterically, not exoterically. What it really means and the power it really holds in all ancient texts. I thought that because I was tapping into this power, I would never have to experience anything that caused me to feel disempowered. But, I was wrong. That wasn't accurate. So when you see me and when you hear me say, I'm going through some stuff, it's not because I'm weak. It's because I'm chosen. I'm strong. I'm resilient. And no matter how many times they have tried to bury us, we must remember that we are seeds and that the earth is our mother. And every mighty strong oak tree started as a small acorn seed. There's nothing small about you. And no matter what issue you might be dealing with in life, I just want to let you know that that has nothing to do with who you are and with what you're capable of doing, who you are capable of being. Everybody ain't gonna tell you this. Because when we have a scarcity mindset, we're afraid to give other people access to power because we're afraid of being left behind. You gotta heal the abandonment issues. You gotta heal the rejection issues. You gotta let go of the resentment. I had to go no contact with my biological family. You read about it in books. You hear people like Lisa Romano talk about it. There are many others, but I actually did it, and I did it publicly. It was one of the scariest, most painful things I ever had to do, but I knew it had to be done. And the accuracy of my gift let me know that I could trust my intuition. I never stopped loving anybody. But I started loving me. And when I started loving me, I started to choose me. And I'm not afraid to let go of people, places, and things that no longer serve me, because I have a higher purpose. And as a Hayoka empath, if we were connected to our indigenous wisdom, we would know that we were Hayoka empaths. For those of us that are, the Lakotas are some of the main tribes that talked about this, but it has many names and has been taught in many different spiritual systems. But these are people who absorb pain. We eat pain. And once when we were in our communities, in our villages, in our tribes, in our positions, and we knew how to do star charts so that we would know who we were and we wouldn't have to go through our entire lifetime trying to be somebody and please people and look successful to everybody else, disconnected from who we truly are. See, it wasn't always this way. But the Ouroboros represents the snake eating its tail, meaning you return back from that which you came. There is no true future for those who do not know the power of their past. And there is no true power for those who do not know the power of the blood of their ancestors that flows through their veins. And so everything that I have been through helped me. And I'm grateful. There's no hate in my heart. I have no regrets. I even love the people who sexually abused me, the people who neglected me. How is that possible? It's possible when you do the work. So don't make excuses. If you're watching me and you feel the call to be more devoted to your soul's journey, this is the message you've been looking for. Don't make excuses. Do the work. And for some of us, doing the work means resting more, healing our nervous system, learning what a vagus nerve is, learning what fight or flight is, what is survival mode, what are cortisol levels that are too high, what's happening with my adrenals, what's going on with my glands. Is my lymphatic system important? What does that mean? Because Western medicine made everything seem physical, and it didn't teach us the spiritual metaphysical meaning behind any of the anatomy of the body. We must learn these things so that we can become the leaders that we were born to be. So if you see me on here selling something in my shop, it's not because I'm desperate for your money. It's because I am using it myself and I see how effective it is. When I started focusing on my lymphatic system, so many emotions that were repressed down inside of me that I didn't even know was in me started to come out. When I stopped eating processed food, I learned how to process my emotions. Are y'all listening to me? I feel like this was all that I needed to say. But on every platform, no matter where I move to, I encounter massive amounts of resistance. And I couldn't figure out why. And I hear other people share knowledge and they're monetized and get paid for it and invited on shows to speak and podcast. And it was strange to me. And then the great mother came and held my hand. She said, Campson, you're not like everybody else. They not like us. You're not for everybody. But those who are able to receive your message will also touch the power of their true self. And she came in the form of a lioness. And she held my hand in her mouth the way a lioness holds her cubs. And I could feel her. My entire body trembled every time she purred. If you've ever been close to a lion, you know what I'm talking about. And I sat there and I said, why did you come to me? And it was almost as if that narrative of being small and I'm nobody and I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. My body is sick no matter what I do. My body is in pain no matter what I do. I don't sleep well at night. Some of the terrible things that happen to me at night haunts me, and now nighttime it doesn't feel safe to me. And I'm tired. And she said to me, I'm going to show you. And the people who are my true children will also see. And this was just a few weeks ago. And I grabbed my daughter. I left the house because I really didn't know what to do. And I went to my neighbor's house and I asked him, "Did you see a lion in our neighborhood?" And he said no. They were completely oblivious because they didn't have the capacity to see what I could see. And a man knocked on the door. They opened the door and he said, "I'm looking for somebody." And then he said, "I'm looking for a lioness and she's pregnant. She's about to go in labor. She's going to go in labor at the full moon and I got to find her before she does." And this WHITE man, he seemed to be telling the truth. So I walked up the hall and I said, I think I know what you're looking for. I think I know the lioness you're looking for." He got excited. He said, "Please tell me, where is she?" And as soon as I got ready to open my mouth and tell him, I was snatched out of the dream. Great Mama said, "Shh." And it took me weeks to analyze the symbology of that dream. I've talked about this very briefly in past lives. But the Great Mother is going through birth pains. And we are all going through birth pains. We are giving birth to a new world. A world where colonizers will no longer kill the lions and the lionesses, hunt them, take their mane. The kings and queens of the jungle will return. We are remembering that we are members of an ancestral intelligence. And each moon, each full moon, each new moon, from this day forward, I proclaim that those who are meant to see this message and be activated will. And anything in your life that has been harming you or your children will start to change. But you must accept the call. You must accept the invitation. This is not just an awakening. This is an initiation. So, I may replay this, but I'm only going to put this on my Patreon. So you can go there and we'll go deeper. I will share more when my body allows me to, because it takes a lot to channel this way. This is not my ego speaking or my mind. And so I'm going to take care of myself and rest. But there are over 400 posts that have been censored, shadow banned, and removed from other platforms that is there as well. So anything that I have offered, any link that you see in my bio, if it speaks to you, use it. Because the time is coming very soon where only those who are doing the work to reconnect with their soul will not be severed, and we will not experience a dystopian timeline. Because we're anchoring ourselves to a higher timeline. And if that speaks to you, you'll know if it's you. Peace, y'all. Peace, y'all.